Setting up the meeting now.
I see it.
Okay, so we are live on Facebook, and we'd like to welcome everybody to a Local 100 Fightback Coalition Facebook live stream event. We're joined by Station Agent Kenneth Murray, Tom Grudemeyer, train operator in the B Division, and train operator Umberto Rodriguez. You're also from the B Division, right, Umberto?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'm John Ferretti, one of the founders of the Local 100 Fightback Coalition. We'll be joined later by other coalition members and some members from RTO. We're here tonight to talk about what everybody's talking about, which is one of the most historic presidential elections in the history of this country, and what it means. And we want to be clear that we don't want this discussion to be amongst coworkers and friends here on Zoom. We want to hear from transit workers. We've been trying to get people to call in. And now more than ever, it's important for us to discuss what kind of struggles we need to lead going forward, who Joe Biden is, what he represents, what we can expect, and how we can win gains and keep them in an era of COVID capitalism. So it's very important. If you want to contribute to this conversation, you text me 917-678-0557. Let me know a telephone number where you can be reached and your name and a little bit of what you want to talk about, and we will put you on live. And we hope to have the widest possible discussion, because Umberto, myself, Tom, and Ken, and others, we can't speak for your experiences, and we can't assume where your consciousness is at, and we need to have this discussion. We don't have it that often, and it's really important that we start. So I just wanted to frame the discussion. Obviously, the defeat of Donald Trump and his removal and the removal from office of a racist sociopath who has destroyed the economy in this country, has allowed tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people to die unnecessarily from COVID-19, children in cages, who's engaged in an ongoing full-throated appeal to racist, white supremacist murderers, is a great thing for working class people, poor people, and oppressed people all over the world. It's a victory won not by Joe Biden. Let's be clear about that. Joe Biden did not win this victory. It was won by the movements that have rocked this country ever since the death of George Floyd, and even before that. It was won by activists in the states that actually told the tale of this election. It was won by the supporters of Rashida Tlaib. It was won by the supporters of Ilhan Omar. It was won by largely Black people. And it's a great thing that a white supremacist, racist, fascist-friendly, wannabe dictator and thug got thrown out of office by those who are most oppressed under the system. So I want to open up some of the discussion so that other people can give their thoughts. And once again, if you want to be involved in this conversation, all you got to do is text us, 917-678-0557. Umberto, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I'll go first. Like I said, it's been a great day. It's been a long week. I mean, considering everything that's been going on. Obviously, due to COVID, due to Trump's mishandling of COVID, we had to extend the election, and many people were scared to go to the polls and vote. So we had mail-in votes, which was necessary. So people complaining about mail-in votes and the corruption of it's ridiculous. Like, people were scared to go to the polls, and people spoke. Even Trump got votes, mail-in votes, man. So he can't complain. Like, the people decided, and that's it. It's over. Now, whether he concedes or whatever he's going to do the next few days, we have to see. But back to what John was saying, yeah, like it was won in the trenches, the grassroots movements, the Black and brown folks that have been fighting. We talk about, Georgia, where Stacey Abrams, who was robbed last year in the gubernatorial race, who spent her energy and her will, her money, her fight to make sure that no one was left unaccounted this year. You know what I'm saying? So people say it's revenge, but I mean, it sucks. She should have won. She should have beat Kemp, but you know, she did what was right. Like, she made sure she put her energy to enfranchising people and giving people back the ballot, and that was the main thing. We saw a lot of people that, you know, that didn't have a voice, and they spoke out this time. You know, and you know, Trump. I mean, Biden got a record amount of votes, not because people love him, but because people came out and voted. People wanted Trump out, so that's why people voted. Like, and we saw that, like, Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, states that we wouldn't expect a Democratic win, and they pulled it off. You know, and we can talk about the Electoral College and its deficiencies and stuff. We can talk about that later. But all in all, he obviously won the popular vote, and you know, the GOP hasn't won a popular vote since who knows when. But you know, at the end of the day, people spoke and we won. And now moving forward, of course, we have to hold Biden accountable. We'll talk about that as well. But the main thing was that we got rid of this Trump, like John was saying. Trump pretty much took didn't believe in the coronavirus. Like, he's still, even last week he was saying that it's a hoax. We're gonna start talking about it tomorrow, and you know, he took it for granted, and people died. So amongst other things, I'm hiring people that, you know, he didn't drain the swamp. He brought his cronies in to run this country, and they're gone too. Thankfully, they're leaving. You know what I'm saying? They're gone. So that's the main thing. Like, he brought in people that weren't qualified to do their job, and he brought them in. And he also had a revolving door of this foolishness. So it's good to see him going. You know, I can't wait to see him. I want to see him speak. I want to see him concede. That's what I want to see him do. But anyway, it's a victory for everybody. You know, like John was saying, it's a victory for people that have been struggling. We're trying to turn this around. So hopefully, you know, moving forward, we can get, well, we're going to get progress. We're going to get rid of the people that are in there now, and then we have the whole Biden accountable moving forward. So that's it. You know, I think we're all good with the outcome.
Kenneth, do you want to speak next?
Sure. You know, I view things from a revolutionary lens. So from my viewpoint, what does it matter if Joe Biden is the president if he continues the same capitalistic policies, if he continues the same corporate policies? You know, I rant and rave about capitalism because it is a menace. Capitalism is not a friend to democracy, but it is an enemy. Capitalism is a cancer to the globe. Capitalism is the money arm of white supremacy. Capitalism destroys freedom for everyone but themselves. Capitalism can build or destroy entire communities. Capitalism encourages greed. The capitalistic corporations suffer from a personality disorder. If corporations were to be sent to a criminal psychologist's office, they will be diagnosed as psychopaths and will be locked away forever. We have a new president, but our struggle continues.
Right. Yeah. Just to follow up on Ken, the way we framed it as a coalition was that by voting for Biden, we are not endorsing his political perspective or his policies or his worldview or his class outlook. We are choosing our enemy for the next 4 years. Which enemy is least dangerous for the working class? Which gives us the most space, time, and ability to prepare the fights that need to come? Tom, did you want to follow up on that?
Let's see. Yeah, I think that's a good point, because this is a discussion John and I have had numerous times about because years ago I was sort of won to the idea through a different political organization that supporting any bourgeois political party was shooting yourself in the foot. And I wasn't thinking of it in terms of a tactical strategy that, as John put it, I think that's a really good way of choosing your enemy. And the fact of the matter is the material conditions on the ground, the working class is not ready to actually conduct a revolution at this time. And whereas Trump poses a very real existential threat to America and the working class and the most vulnerable and most super exploited layers within the working class. He had to go, and and voting for Biden, and I was just actually thinking that I so much would have I preferred Stacey Abrams to be the VP than Kamala Harris, but I mean, in some regards, both of them should be forced to resign from the Democrats and register as Republicans, based on. But at least they're not as frothing at the mouth, wannabe incipient fascists that Trump and Pence are. So that's something. And I think my biggest concern, there was a lot of people talking about that Biden might be easier to push to the left, and hopefully that is the case. But I'm really concerned whether or not he's going to have the spine to stand up to the backlash from these armed militia groups, the Proud Boys, that whole umbrella of reactionary activists out there on that want to install a fascist regime. Whether he's going to do anything, because there's just so much evidence that the police are there just turning a blind and aiding them, the way they did with Kyle Rittenhouse and in Portland, the cold-blooded murder of that self-described Antifa activist who was defending his friend's life. He was going to be shot him, and then they just show up without announcing that he's under arrest or anything and just shoot him. Whether that's a taste of what's to come in the coming months between now and January 20th. I have concerns about that.
Yeah, I think we have to be very vigilant about what happens between now and January 20th. Not just what Trump can do, but also what his minions and followers can do.
Right.
But Anthony Staley's with us from Stations Department. Anthony, would you like to comment on this?
The only thing I really have to say about as far as the election went, they talk about how it was the most people that ever voted in an election in history, really. Mm-hmm. But a lot of things were brought out that people haven't paid attention to or didn't realize. You had these kinds of numbers because people were able to do mail-in ballots.
Right.
And when most of Trump people, as they said, they voted on the day of. And the best thing they ever did was to have mail-in ballots and the early voting, because actually, it made people get out there, even in passing. They voted, and that's why we came up with such high numbers. This idea about us being a split nation at this point, where you have the left and the right, it comes out, a lot of it comes out from the rhetoric that Trump has been saying over the years, and we're allowed to get away with it over the years. And now it's going to be an issue between the two sides now, as who's going to portray or enforce their agenda from this point on. Mm-hmm. And that's the frightening part, because this guy is irresponsible as far as realizing he's in a leadership position, and what he says, a lot of people listen to it. So that's why this defiance, this so-called going against the political process, the election process, this is why it's going to be a hard and a real serious transition time for not just the government, but the United States as a whole.
Yeah.
You see, because he's refusing to concede, and that's the defiant that certain people have, thinking they're elitists, or they have more have more privileges than others. Their privileges means more than other people's privileges, and that's has been a decline in us as a nation as a whole. People were saying that they felt such a relief after results were given. It's like the pressure was taken off of them, because they had been beaten down over these years and forced by almost like a dictatorship as to what they wanted to do and what was not going to do.
Yeah.
You see, for the people. When it came to this issue of the pandemic, You know, instead of being intelligent enough to bring in scientists and the people that know what's going on when it comes to that, he simply refused to acknowledge it. Like it wasn't going to come back to haunt him. 200,000 people dying from a pandemic, and you simply refuse to acknowledge it or
Yeah.
make a mockery of it. That's incompetent. That's incompetent, and you're in a leadership role for the United States, period. And this is your attitude towards it. So that's the attitude that turned a lot of people off. That's why people felt downtrodden from the 4 years of this guy. I truly believe that you know, this guy, you know, at one point, you know, I really felt that Biden was going to win because this here gave this type of election with the mail-in ballots and the early voting allowed people that normally may not participate, it gave them a chance to participate. The disabled, all the people that are sitting at home. So that's why when they tried to use this narrative to say that, oh, you know, all of a sudden, yeah, now I'm losing. Well, you know, the first ballots that were count was that the people that voted on the day of.
Yeah.
You see, and then when the numbers start to change, all of a sudden now the narrative become, oh, they cheating, they stealing from us. You know, and that's an insult to those that participated and wanted, you know, an honest and fair election. You're trying to give this impression and downgrade it as a process that's been in place for years, and you're trying to say like, oh, you know, and without any evidence, you're saying it's a farce, it's a fraud.
Yeah.
And that's also the incompetence that exists in the White House for these 4 years.
Yeah.
So for once, maybe something will good come out of this. I mean, picking Biden was a choice of the lesser of the two evils, yeah, for one. But like I said, people also change. So that remains to be seen. Like he said in his speech, give him a chance. Okay, he's got that chance. Let's hope he does something with it. Much more than what we've been getting over the last 4 years. That's for sure.
Well, Seth Rosenberg has joined us, by the way, as has his daughter. In the background there. Seth, you wanna start comment now?
Oh, let me listen in for a bit, and then.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Yeah, Seth was delayed because of car troubles and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm gonna give him a chance to get acclimated here. Also, we need people to share out the stream. Okay. If you're watching the stream, you can also share it to other groups, share it to your page, share it to other RTO and other MTA groups, so that we can have the widest conversation possible. So we really need people to help us out with that. Also, responding to to what Anthony was saying regarding Trump. Yeah, I thought that Biden would win too, but let's be honest, this election should not have been close.
Right.
It's a really troubling development to have 6 more million people vote for Trump. You can't say that you don't know who he is now. No one can say that. No one can say they didn't know he was a racist sociopath. No one can say that they didn't know that he was a political arsonist throwing gasoline on the fire and basically making things worse for everyone by his actions, not only just rhetorically, but in terms of concrete actions. But the kind of campaign that Biden ran is a campaign promising absolutely nothing to working class people. All he promised was that he's not Trump. All he promised was that we would have some competent leadership. And now with his speech, I don't know if you guys have seen the speech he gave last night. The speech he gave last night was basically a surrender to Mitch McConnell. We're going to work together. We're going to work together. We have a mandate to work together. I don't think that's what the millions of people, the 74 million people who voted for Joe Biden, thought was the mandate they gave him. The
Right.
mandate they gave him was they wanted some of the things that he said he was for, like a $15 an hour minimum wage. Why did Biden, for example, lose Florida? You know, there was a ballot referendum in Florida that won by 61% for a $15 an hour minimum wage. He never mentioned it. He mentioned it in the convention, but other than that, he didn't campaign on it. And this is what happens when you don't have any economic message to working class and oppressed and
All
poor
right.
people who feel
Um,
like that. Anthony, you trying to get in here? Anthony?
yeah, I was going to say something right quick.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
don't think it was a total surrender to Mitch McConnell because they've been working before and they worked together. That was, to me, was a signal to him to saying that we're going to try to cultivate the previous relationship they did because they did a lot of work together in the past. Remember, Biden has 47 years of service, and
Yeah,
a lot of his work was done with Mitch McConnell.
yeah, but what were they
So
working on, Anthony? What was Mitch McConnell and
I
Joe Biden
understand
talking
that.
about
I
working
understand. What I'm saying now is this: the what they worked on then doesn't predict what they're going to do now.
No,
But what I'm saying is not when he made the comment about of them being able to work together. It was more of a signal that okay, we worked together in the past. Now we have to work together, and with him being in a different capacity.
yeah.
But like I said, it remains to be seen. But
And
I didn't take it as that. I took it as this guy preparing and trying to comfort the people that put him in there. That's the way I took it. But
Well,
you said you have your
what
reason
I'm
for.
saying, well, what I'm saying to you, Anthony, is that when Joe Biden was the vice president, he negotiated a deal with Mitch McConnell to guarantee the permanency of about 90% of the Bush tax cuts.
Yep.
What they also collaborated on was a quote grand bargain that was going to attack Medicare and Social Security. And if you knowing the history of this country between Republicans and Democrats collaborating and working together, and what that has meant in terms of the end of welfare as we know it, attacks that are outright racist against the most oppressed people in the society, bailing out corporations, the debt crisis and all of that, and what that's meant for the social safety net in the society, we have to have our eyes open about what it means when they talk about bipartisan cooperation. Bipartisan cooperation got us into the war in Iraq, the occupation of Afghanistan, drone programs, and the list goes on and on and on. I'm more than willing to hold out open an opinion about what that's going to be, because it all depends on what kind of pressure is put on him. But we have to know who Jim Crow Joe is, okay? We can't act like we don't know that he gets down with segregation.
I understand that, but you also got to remember that his campaign was at one point at its lowest point when he went to visit the churches down in South Carolina,
Right.
right? And if it wasn't for the majority whip who's down there, Clayton?
Clyburn.
Yeah, that's that individual there breathed life into his campaign to allow the campaign to fluster and especially among minorities. So I'm thinking he's adept to them and those people that he brought to the plate to help vote to put him over, to make him win on this year. So my thing is this. I want to be a little optimistic about this guy, and I want to see what his actions are. I mean, he broke the mold when he decided to go against the grain and bring in not just a woman of color. We're not going to even keep, because I've been tired of hearing that all day. But the fact that he brought a woman on board to be second in command.
Right.
It says a lot. So what we need to do is just sit back and allow this guy to say if he's the same Biden from years ago, or is he's a changed individual at this stage of his life?
Well,
Okay,
Anthony,
we
what I would,
know it's not going to be an easy fight because you're going to have a split Senate. He's going to have a House in his majority, but we're going to have a split Senate, and if we're lucky with the runoff that they have in Georgia, we may get 2 seats, and then we'll be the majority.
right.
And it may help him do some of the stuff that he's want to do.
Well,
But
Anthony, what I would say is that, look, nobody knows how this is going to turn out. But I think that since it was majority Black communities and activists who lifted him over the finish line and won this election for him, I think is more than reasonable for those activists to demand that you will implement our interests. You will implement our demands.
Well, you can best be assured that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. You see, and that's the rhetoric and the fear mongering that the right side is going to use. They're gonna start, they're gonna mess with the Supreme Court. They're gonna stack the court. They're going to do all kind of rhetoric is coming out now. My thing is this: you only could judge a man by his actions. Okay. Sometimes people make decisions as a matter of convenience, and especially when you're making a decision from a background perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And then those that are out in the front, that's going to take the brunt of it. Some of them, they'll do what it is to protect their reputations, their integrity, and which we know not many has. And the word integrity is like speaking French to some of these cats. They don't know what integrity is, and self-respect. They'll do what they want out of spite. Trump is like a little kid that brings a basketball to the playground, and he can't play, but everybody else is playing with his ball, but he can't play. So now he get mad and he said, "Give me my ball. I'm going home. I'm going home." No, we can't do this. No, we can't do it because it's his game.
Yeah.
So this is all I'm saying. We were wrecked with childish incompetence for 4 years. Okay, let's come up out of this depressed state that the United States been in for these 4 years, dust ourselves off, and like you said, try to work together. See what's going to come out of this.
Okay.
We may be, we're not even sure what the agendas are. People are already talking about a stimulus package. People are talking about various things to push and get this economy back on track. Let's see what these people are going to do, because listen, the first 90 days in office is going to give you an indication of what this guy intends to do. He picking his staff is going to mean a lot as well.
Sure.
So with all these variables there, I just think, it's just, let's sit back and watch and see what this guy do before we just go on and just say, we're sticking a match to the house already because this guy is garbage.
Anthony, the house is already on fire. I hate to break this.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's on fire. Let's see what happens after the 20th.
By the way, I'm going to post in the chat, in the comments, an article from Politico, which actually talks about who they're already expecting to be nominated for each position, and it's a rogues gallery of corporate swine and lobbyists and actual CEOs of corporations. So that people can get an idea of who the potential Biden cabinet will look like. I think Ken had his hand up. Is that right, Ken?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you?
Yeah, we hear.
Okay. What is needed, in my view, is a political leadership from the working class. I say this time and time again, whether you're in the union or in our nation, we must not be afraid to fight for justice. Remember, if you're not at the table, you are on the menu. Now, let me be very, very clear. I do not like capitalism. I personally advocate for a system in which workers control the means of production and enjoy the fruits of their labor, free from the demands of the capitalistic bosses. Let me be very, very clear. Unions were built by socialism. Our union has been quiet on issues that concern the workers. I want you to please remember, if the union is silent when we're dying, they become accessories to the crime. It is time for us to understand the election of Joe Biden means we have to amp up everything we need to say and do. This man authored the 1994 crime bill, which decimated the Black community. And because Black people have Stockholm syndrome, we embrace this nonsense when we should have been avoiding it with everything. So now I want each and every one of us to understand, when this whole thing is over and he becomes El Presidente, we must keep putting the pressure on this man, because if he allows the capitalistic swine to come back into this, which is our union, we need to go to war.
Thank you, Kenny. Seth, you had your hand up? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, let me try and tie a couple threads together from what Ken and Anthony were saying. I think there's some stuff in each that I agree with and some stuff that I don't. Like, I think that if we have to look, I don't agree with Anthony that we need to give Joe Biden a chance. I think we know who Joe Biden is. And don't get me wrong, I'm glad that Trump is out. I think it's a significant victory for us that Trump is out. But Joe Biden isn't a friend of workers or of people of color or oppressed people. Better than Trump, no doubt. But if you look at Biden and you look at the history of the Democratic Party, which are deeply entwined, the truth is that time and time again in the last 20, 30 years, the Democratic Party has only won because of the votes of people of color. And every time when they've got into office, right, they have ignored the plight of people of color and they have attacked people of color, right? It's a consistent history. The only time that doesn't happen is when workers and unions and people of color rise up and build movements to fight back. Then the Democrats sometimes listen. So I think learning from that history, we have to go in recognizing that I supported Joe Biden, not because I think he's a friend. I think he's an enemy. Both parties, I think, are. But I'd rather fight Joe Biden than fight Trump. Having Biden in office gives us a better opportunity to organize and fight. And it puts Trump and his Klan and his neo-Nazi stormtroopers back on their heels a little bit. And we need to take that time and organize so that we can put pressure on. Because if we don't start winning the things that we want to win, that show people that there's an alternative to Trump and the xenophobia and the racism, then after 4 years of Biden, people are going to turn back to that, right? That's what 8 years of Obama did. 8 years of Obama, people weren't mobilized anymore. People were disappointed. The banks got bailed out. Wall Street got bailed out. People of color lost their mortgages and their homes in record numbers. So the only way, right, Trump, like, we all have to admit the truth. I agree with what John said, right? This election is I'm glad that Trump is out, but this election is frightening to some degree. Trump showed everything that he could do, and more people voted for him than before. And Democrats lost some ground. And why is that? Because Trump is a fighter for his side, right? He pulls no punches. He's one of the most influential presidents ever. He's a buffoon and an idiot, right? And a narcissist and all of that. But yet he pulled no punches. He gave no apologies, and he fought for his agenda. And Biden's not going to do that for us. We have to do that for ourselves, right? That's where I agree with Ken. We need to organize and we need to fight. And if we show people in this time of crisis, in this time of pandemic, that we can win things for working people, for people of color that matter in their lives, then we're going to start to pull the country back away from the direction that Trump pulled it. That's the only way we can do that and defeat Trumpism and defeat the Klan and defeat the neo-Nazis that are rising. My thought.
I agree with what you're saying, Seth, but the only thing that we failed at, and I'm talking about we as a nation, where we failed at is when we voted for Obama and brought him in. When the midterms came, we were all caught up with the fact that he was the president, but we didn't vote it during the midterms to give him the support that he needed to get what he want, some of the things that he wanted done.
But why?
We just took it off. We took off and allow the Republicans to gear up and keep their positions as far as in the legislative part of government, and let them still control that, because most of everything, any and everything that Obama did had to be done through an executive order.
Well, that was in the second term, Anthony. First of all, he had a
but I'm saying the
majority in the Senate, and the majority in the House of Representatives for 2 years, and they got nothing done. Nothing for working class people, nothing that they promised. So what did you think was going to happen in the midterm elections, except they were going to get massacred? And
but I'm saying that many people did not vote in the midterms.
Right.
That's what and those that knew that they had to put people in place knew that, and they went out there and supported their candidate. That's what I'm saying. Right. Yeah, the Democrats were most of the Democrats were disappointing, and a lot of people didn't support the candidates. Mm-hmm. But in return, knowing that Obama was there, those on the right knew that we're going to vote and make sure our candidates were in place to make it even harder for whatever he wanted to get done.
Right, but Anthony, as a union rep, right, that there's a certain way that human consciousness works, right? And that if you get all your emotions and all of your hopes and all of your you put everything on this person who says they're gonna deliver on these reforms that you fought for tooth and nail, had the biggest turnout for a president before this election than you had almost 100 years. And not one thing except Obamacare was delivered. You know what that means and what that's going to lead to. It's going to lead to demoralization. And what we're saying to you is that this is a very dangerous period, and there will be a new Trump, and he or she will be worse. He or she will be competent enough. We're in a dangerous position if that person is competent enough not to say the quiet parts out loud, and not stupid enough to say the things that Trump said, with the weak Democratic Party that we have, that is in bed with corporate interests. I mean, it's not that we know we have a crystal ball and we can tell when that Biden's going to sell us out this way, that way, and the other thing. But we know who he is. We know he's took money in his campaign from Big Pharma. We know he's proposing all these CEOs to be at the highest levels of the government. We know he wants from the beginning to work with Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is the bane of our existence. He is the single person most responsible for the downward trend of our living standards and everything.
I understand what you're saying, but understand this, and I'm glad you used Mitch McConnell as an example. Mm-hmm. See, Mitch McConnell people is always going to vote for him. He's from Kentucky, mm-hmm. and you know just how them folks feel, and they understand that they'll, no matter what, with all the things that Mitch McConnell done, they still voted him back in. And that's the point I'm trying to make, that you don't just come in for the major elections and take off on the midterm elections. You got to keep putting your people to support the people that you put in place.
I don't think we disagree on that, Anthony. I don't
okay, but I'm glad you used that as an example, because it just shows what I'm saying. even as a union rep, right?
Mhm.
We represent people that that we may have issues with, may it be political or personal. But the bottom line is this: we got to represent them, though, right? We can't say yeah, no. We can't pick and choose. If somebody asks you to represent them, you have no choice but to represent them. Okay, but you also got to also let your people know. Let your people know what's going on. This is how I operate. This is what I do. So this here, you got to maintain in the process of doing this you got to maintain your self-respect, your integrity, because you're also the go-between management and the members. So you got all this that's on your plate. It's no different from when it comes to politics. In other words, you vote in a president, then let's go to the next election prepared to vote in somebody that's going to support that president in your agenda of what you want. And the next phase, when it comes to voting for the Senate, when it comes to voting for the House, when it comes to voting for your local, what you call it? Chuck Schumer, what you call it, been around for years. And look at the state of New York. Come on.
Yeah.
We have to put in people that's going to do the work and the bidding for the working class people of New York City. The people that get out here and get on these rusty behind trains and ride and go wherever their destinations are and do their 8 hours and come home tired and still trying to survive and feed their children and provide food on the table. Them are the people that we're supposed to be supporting. We got a union that sits there and dictate to us who they're going to support with our money, with our PAC money. They telling us when they ready, this is who we're going to support without one question to one member of the membership and ask, who are you supporting? Who do you think we supporting? Do you think we're united enough as a union to call a general meeting and let everybody sit in one room together, all 40,000 of us, and the president is likable enough to get up on the stage and say, we got a process in front of us. We got the upcoming state senate or United States Senate for New York, and we got these here people are the candidates. Now we're gonna sit here and we're gonna vote on who do we want, how we gonna spend our, not yours, not theirs, our money on this process. That would never happen because we're so lackadaisical when it comes to the most important thing that puts us in a position to be strong. And that is putting in people that's going to further and push our agenda.
Okay, Anthony, and the other Anthony wants to get in here. He's going to.
Okay, go ahead, man. I don't want to take over here.
And really? And Anthony brought his Superman jersey, so we got to give him.
All right, I'm out.
How we doing?
I'm out, guys.
All right.
Yeah, I thought I'd show my true identity today, but I think the overall issue, we have to put people in there that represent us, and speaking on that, people that have our interests at heart that want to represent the working class. AOC had some insightful analysis on this past election, where traditional Democrats, more centrist, more corporate Democrats, were, including Governor Cuomo, were seeking to blame the progressive wing of the party for Democratic losses in contests that were close, where actually the opposite happened. The more progressive candidates and the ones who received the support of more progressive and endorsement of more progressive candidates won their seats, whereas the ones who rejected progressive help or progressive endorsements, they lost their seats, including here on Staten Island, which is Max Rose. So it's like the Democratic Party, and you know, that also explains the phenomenon of Trump to some degree. You know, outside of the racism, the xenophobia, and all the misogyny, all the negatives that are associated with Trump, there's an economic angst that is gripping the entire country, and it manifests itself in things like Trump. The scapegoating that Trump engaged in propelled him to the victory in the Republican primaries in the last election. You know, it's like it resonated with people who were already predisposed to blame Black people, to blame Mexicans, and to blame, you know, the changing demographics and the changing culture for their diminishing slice of the American pie. You know, I'm going to tell this story anecdotally. You know, on the last election, on the eve of the last election, my daughter had just enrolled in a small university in Western Pennsylvania. It was one of the oldest universities in the country, Allegheny, and it's located in Western Pennsylvania. And my wife and I, you know, drove out there several times, and we saw Trump billboards everywhere. And you know, it's perplexing to see people who have been the biggest victims of you know, Reaganism and that type of trickle down economics support a Republican candidate. And you know, when we pulled into like this fast food place, I saw this kid who pulled up next to us just as we were pulling up, and he was in a beat up old car, and he got out of his car. He had the fast food restaurant uniform on, and to pull up to close the window on his car, he had to open the door, grab both sides of the window, and then pull it up manually just to close the window. And you know, when he did that, it caused me to observe more the area around where we were living, because you know, I had never been to Western Pennsylvania and I really didn't know much about it. And, you know, I thought to myself as well, you know, this kid, I have more in common with this kid at his age than I do with a lot of people here in New York City. So it wasn't really, you know, geographics, it was more economics. It wasn't even really, you know, so much race as it is economics that caused, you know, yet my thought process is to politically, at least, to seek to elect people who espouse and support policies that are aimed at helping people on the bottom. You know, I was only able to send my daughter to that university because both my wife and I have decent jobs. You know, but it should be that, you know, anybody should be able to go to college, a quality university. But that's not the case. And that would help that kid, as well as, you know, kids here in the Bronx, kids here in East New York, kids here on Staten Island, kids in the inner cities who are disadvantaged or don't have the wherewithal to pursue higher education, as well as this kid out here in Western Pennsylvania. But there's a divide that has been exploited by both parties to keep people from having a movement that would actually, you know, demand that type of economic justice in this country. You know, and you know, Trump was an outgrowth to some degree, to a large degree, of the economic situation in this country. Now, we have elected, you know, basically a corporate Democrat, and really for the majority of a career, a prosecutor. And people, you know, I understand, and I did vote for Biden and Harris. I, you know, I guess you could say campaigned to them to whatever degree I could, you know, on the, you know, through social media and in person. We had a lawn sign in front of the house, you know, Biden, Harris. I campaigned for them. I supported them. I voted for them because, you know, Trump represents the worst of our society, and he represents he exploited the divisions for his own personal gain and for to the benefit of those in the top 1%. And in order to reverse that, to order to have some hope of moving the country more to the left where it needs to be, Biden and Harris were the only alternatives that were present. But that being said, what I see with Biden and Harris is the potential to return back to the same old. It's like we can't be happy and dancing and celebrating, just because these people were elected. Yeah. It has to be still a grassroots movement. And, throughout American history, this is probably what this is. I'm not even going to say probably. This is what keeps America from moving forward is the racial divide. And it has been exploited masterfully by those who wish to exploit poor people, working people, middle-class people throughout the history of this country. We have never really had a true movement that's based on just working people. We have had fits and starts, and they've always been sabotaged. But we need to have a true movement that's based upon class. And the issue of race has to be addressed and has to be resolved and has to be acknowledged before we can move forward with or simultaneously, I should say, as we move forward and and create a movement based upon class so that we can have real equity in this country.
Anthony, thank you. We actually have someone calling into the show to speak to us live. His name is Daniel Walker, and he's a former Uber driver and, in the gig economy. And Daniel, it belongs to the millennial generation. So if there's any group of Americans and working class people who've borne the bitter fruit of this economy, it's some people like Daniel. So I wanted to hear from his experience. Daniel, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, can everybody hear him? Speak up, Daniel.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Walker. I used to drive Uber before the pandemic. I've been seeing a lot of things about what's happening in the country, but I've been staying silent for the most part, just so I can retrospect more instead of just being more active on talking about it. Because the more you're in the game, you can't see, all the moving pieces. So I've seen that one of the things that they're doing to the gig economy is the people that are the millennials right now, what they're trying to do is that we have a technology crisis where instead of actually dealing with all those problems that you guys were talking from beforehand about racism, classism, and politics, one of the big moves that they're trying to do to justify not dealing with any of these issues at all is to make technology to a certain extent, artificial intelligence to a certain extent, where we can outsource human beings. So right now, they're trying to outsource the US dollar, where soon what they're going to have to be doing is they're going to be doing stimulus checks. They're going to have to take the money from somewhere and bankrupt a certain sector of the economy that was supposed to be for the average citizen, like taxes wise and stuff like that. And one of the things that just to have a clear timeline, one of the things that I can see Joe Biden doing is that there's not much he can really do because of his situation that he got put into. But what he will do now is that he will look to other countries and he'll just copy and paste working models and just try to integrate it as much as he can into our society. So that way he can say, well, I did a little here, and then the little I did should suffice to be enough in the situation that I got put into. Because that could be a cop-out that he could say, like, well, I got put into this, I didn't make this mess, So this is what you got to take now because this is all I can do. So one of the things that are happening right now is that we're going to outsource money in the sense of being a cashless society like how China, because if we're implementing what China is doing with the masks and their distances, because not to say anything politically incorrect, but that's where the disease started, like the coronavirus. So it's just natural that we're just going to be copying and mimicking what they're doing over here to see some success, because success leaves clues and people follow success. So one of the things that they do in China that they're trying to start to implement here is that we're trying to use our phones to pay for products and services instead of using cash. So one of the things that I've seen, I've been following the market, the stock market carefully, is that they're getting ready to make some type of stimulus plan where they're giving out money to the masses next year, but it's projected. This is projected, but what in return, what's going to happen is that they're going to crash the dollar while they're giving out the money, and in return, they're going to go to a digital currency like Bitcoin to run away from the problems that was created with the physical fiat in the first place for a little bit, so they can structure themselves. The elitists can be on top, and then everybody just follows forward and follows in that structure. And one of the things will happen is that banks will disappear, and people like bank tellers and people that work in the banks, they will disappear, because with Bitcoin and digital currency, you don't need banks. And credit and things like that will change as well. They're talking about making driverless Uber cars.
Yeah.
Drivers, they already fired a lot of pilots from airplanes because the AIs fly the drones fly the planes, and they're talking about getting rid of the gas stations where that's like 3 million people. I mean, not gas stations. I'm sorry. The trucking situation where the truck drivers, there's 3 million truck drivers, and they're trying to get rid of the 3 million truck drivers, and then all the gas stations and the hotels and the places that revolve around the truck drivers will also be eliminated. And basically, this is all just to get away from the stigma of racism and the overwhelming burden of classism and racism and politics all together by saying, hey, why don't we just outsource human beings? And this is not the way to go, because then there's going to be even more uncivil arrests. And that's another thing that we're not kind of talking about too, about the technology crisis, where they outsourced all the jobs already to third world countries. So they gutted it out for the following people like me and other people, millennials, and there's nowhere to really kind of advance to follow through to see an American dream. They gutted out the American dream. And then now we're complaining about what's here now. So all they do as a instant gratification technique, or for a situation, for lack of better terms, is if you complain about something, we'll just outsource you. And that is not the way to go, but that's the way that we're going today. And that's something that we kind of have to hold Joe Biden to, so that way, like we can get, so that way this problem that's going to take 20, 30 years to fix from COVID, from not doing anything a whole year, another problem doesn't spill out trying to fix another problem. You know what I'm saying? Like a hamster on a wheel type situation. So that has to be addressed. The technology crisis that we're having also has to be addressed with the COVID situation, because they go hand in hand. Because what we've seen, just to come into conclusion, is that every time that they have a situation that they feel overwhelmed about, like the government, that's what I'm talking about, an elitist, they just outsource, and it makes other problems way worse.
Well, their solution is for you to have no future as a millennial, basically, to vaporize any kind of economic opportunity for the next generation. This is the new normal. And they're trying to instruct people that the American dream was a fantasy and that you must be asleep to believe it. But in any case, thank you so much, Daniel, for joining us. I hope you'll join us in the future.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night. I think Umberto was next. You got to unmute, Umberto.
There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah. I guess going back to what we were talking about, Biden. Yeah, I'm trying to regain my train of thought. But yeah, so like Staley was saying, I mean, he's kind of forced to work with Mitch because Mitch is the Senate Majority Leader. So he's going to have a hand in his cabinet. So we know he's going to pick some moderates. And we all know Biden's a moderate. Let's not act like he's socialist as Trump and his cronies been saying. He's a socialist. That's kind of the fear factor they use to try to get people to vote against him. But Biden is not a socialist by any means. He's a moderate, he's a centrist. But I think Mitch McConnell, he's going to have a hand in his cabinet. Senate Majority Leader has veto power for the cabinet. So we know he's going to. Well, first of all, we know that Biden's going to repeal a lot of the stuff that Trump did, which is not anything progressive because it's just like he's just cleaning up the mess, and that's supposed to happen. So hopefully that's going to put us in the right direction. But yeah, he's gonna Biden's a moderate. He said he wants to work with people on both sides. So he's gonna do that. He's gonna pick Wall Street people. He's gonna pick CEOs. That's we need to expect that. We need to hold him accountable on that. But I think what Staley was saying earlier about it's very important. The midterm elections are very important. You know what I'm saying? And with this, and we always have an energized voting block during the presidential elections, but it doesn't spill over into the midterm elections. And we saw here, even locally, we saw how in the primaries the progressive Democrats were able to grab seats from the establishments, and we need to do that. We need to push these local. The local is where it counts most, So we have to push. We have to get behind the DSA people who are not part of the establishment, who are working with us, working with TW Local 100 Fightback, people that are fighting with us. We have to support them and put them into office. And once again, like Staley was saying, that we don't have no say in who the union endorses, but we still can go out there and give our voice. And I think that's important. Like, for example, even this election, we had a chance to have a Senate majority, a state Senate majority, which means that they had the power to override any Cuomo veto, which would have been huge. I don't think they gained the Senate majority, but it would have been huge because a lot of the local senators are very progressive, and they would have forced the hand of Cuomo. Cuomo's very, iron-fisted. He's all about himself. He's a narcissist too. As much as we say Trump is one, Cuomo's a narcissist, and he loves himself. He's pitching his book, during the pandemic. So we would have had a Senate majority, and we would have been able to override Cuomo's iron-fisted decisions. But in any case, I think the local elections are important, and moving forward, that's what we have to do. Like we have an energized electorate. We have to go out there and continue to vote and put our energy. We can win these local elections with these progressives and DSA types. Like these candidates can locally, and especially easily during the midterm elections because they don't have as much people. The turnout's lower, so they tend to have an easier time to turning these seats. So I think that's important moving forward. I'm actually got to sign off, unfortunately, but it's been a great discussion. But yeah, I think that's the main point, is that we have to hold Biden accountable. We have to push forward into voting, into pushing energy into the midterm elections and supporting real Democrats or real candidates that support us, that support Local 100, that support Black and brown folks, that are in the trenches, that are out there, that support BLM, that are out there fighting. They're not just playing a role every 4 years when they want to get elected. They're going to pander. We need to put our energy behind people that are going to support us 100%. And anyway, y'all be safe out there. It's still election season. So, it's good to have in the chat, and we'll definitely talk, y'all. Peace.
Take it easy, Breto.
You're muted, John.
Yeah, John.
You're muted, John.
I said part of the analogy I wanted to make in some response to some of what you were saying, because I agree with you about the midterm elections and supporting insurgent candidates and supporting DSA type candidates, people who are of the movement. But a way we can kind of think about it in terms of Biden is we have the same kind of approach to Biden that we have to Utano. We know who Utano is. We know who Biden is. We know what they've done. We know what they'll do. And we know they can't be trusted. And so therefore we support them in every step they take towards fighting the bosses. But we don't have any illusions about what their interests are and who they are as a person, and the fact that they're not ultimately on our side, and that we got to be on our side, and we got to have our own back. By the way, we have a caller to the show who's an 1199 member. Her name's Adina. So I'm going to have her speak first, and then I'll get to the other people who want to speak. Adina, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here, John. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Well, I just wanted to touch on something that Seth said, Seth Rosenberg, and I agreed with him wholeheartedly. And what he stated was that Trump really fights for his base, and he didn't pull no punches. He didn't apologize. He was like, "This is what it is. I don't care if you like me, yes or no. That's what it is." And I feel that we need someone to fight for our base. And I don't think Joe Biden is that person. I don't see him being, that nasty, or I don't see him being that person that's going to fight for us. Basically, it seems like the working class is going to have to pull those punches. The working class, or the struggles that people have led, Black Lives Matter, all those struggles that people are doing, that the people that put Joe in power, those are the people that's basically going to have to say that this is what it is. They're going to have to speak from the heart, because I think that we basically need something to help the younger generation now, to help the older generation, to help the disabled, to help people that the whole country, because it just looks it looks like a very bleak future. It doesn't look strong in my opinion. That's what I have to say tonight.
Thank you, Adina. That was very insightful. Appreciate your comments, and you've been on our show before, so I'm sure you'll be. We have an open door.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. I see Seth had his hand up. Yeah, Seth.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment. I think that, Staley has brought up the midterm elections, and to some degree, I agree with him. The problem is, I think we have to be honest about why people didn't vote in the midterm elections. And that's because, let's go back to 2008 and Obama's election, right? What's the first thing he does, even before he gets into office, is he bails out the banks and Wall Street, right? And he lets the rest of us go under, right? So the fact is that after that happened, people weren't that energized. People were like, why should I even vote at all? I'm getting screwed over by both sides. And so I think that the problem there is that personally, I don't see us electing people who represent us for the most part. I don't think either party does, but the Democrats can be fought better than the Republicans can. And I think that if we don't want a repeat of what happened in 2008 or what happened in the midterms with Obama, then we need to fight, right? I think one of the things I like the best about participating in the Black Lives Matter protests is there's a chant, which is, because the police have been exposed as racist, systemically racist and brutal, that we end up with, that they don't keep communities of color safe, right? And often they're threats to community of color. So people have the chant, who keeps us safe? We do, right? And that's really how we have to think about what's going on now. The responsibility to win, to put pressure on Biden is us, right? If we're not mobilized to the point where people are like, we better give them what they want or stuff is going to go crazy, then we're not going to get anywhere. I think Trump showed that you can achieve a lot by pushing for your side and not reaching out across the aisle. I don't think we should be saying, oh, well, Biden's got to work with Mitch McConnell. No, I think we have to say, we're going to put pressure. We're going to force the Democrats to listen to us. And then Biden's going to go to the table and say, you got 10 million people out on the streets there, right? Demanding that you tax the rich. So either we're going to give them something or just let's let it become 20 million or 30 million, right? So we need to provide a credible threat so that Mitch McConnell says, well, I better give something up, or or things are going to get worse. If we don't start mobilizing and building that now, then when we get to the midterm elections, people are going to be like, well, we were in the middle, we got into this pandemic. Maybe they did something better with respect to people wearing masks or something like that. But Jeff Bezos is still making money hand over fist, and I got thrown out of my apartment, right? I lost my job. don't get unemployment anymore, right? So if those questions aren't answered, right? If people don't see, yes, we won stuff, then we're not going to win people over to our side, and people aren't going to want to go out and vote to keep the agenda going. So it's up, right now it's up to us. And we have to, the problem, what happened, I think, after Obama and what happens after when Democrats get elected is that people get complacent, right? I supported Joe Biden. I supported Biden-Harris. I supported their ticket for the first time in decades, right? I have supported. But the risk that comes with that is people say, oh, they got in, now they're going to do stuff for us, we can sit back. Absolutely not, right? If we sit back, then 4 years later, we've got Trump Jr. or Trump again or some other person leading the neo-Nazis. And I don't want that to happen. So we got to get prepared now, and we have to start fighting. We need to have an agenda of a pandemic plan, economic relief, right? No evictions, support for workers, unemployment, all that stuff needs to come so that people know that if they don't vote in the midterms, then those things could be taken away and people could be attacked more. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you. Hold on, Anthony. Anthony Steiner goes next, and then you, okay?
All right.
Okay. Anthony Steiniger.
Yeah. Just a couple of things. Yeah, I agree with Seth. We have to have a concrete, something concrete in people's hands in order to have them be motivated to vote in the midterm elections. But to address the caller the previous caller, the first caller, where he talked about technology, and that got me thinking. I can't remember any other candidate besides Andrew Yang actually addressing that with some sort of plan. And really, that automation is changing the economy, not just here but worldwide. And it's something that is going to change everything. It's going to change everything, and it really needs to be addressed. And there's a lot of fear mongering out there about socialism, but the fact is that the world is changing. We can't continue with doing things the way we have been for the past 100 years. And we have to change. There has to be new policies put in place in order for that to happen. But, Staley is right. And we need to get people out there. And with these runoffs in Georgia, more immediately, this is of immediate concern. And it will affect everything that we're talking about right now, is the control of the Senate. We could render Mitch McConnell basically anything he has to say could be rendered moot if we get the voter turnout in Georgia. My wife, Marianza, she's actually involved with some of these groups, and I'll be putting information up on our local 100 Fightback page on how people can canvass in Georgia and things that they can do if they're not in Georgia to actually try and help to get the vote out for these runoffs. And whether it be phone banking, whether it be contacting people via email or whatever it is that we can do to get the vote out in Georgia to win these runoff elections. That's something that has to be done immediately, and that anybody who voted for Biden and Harris, everybody who voted for Biden and Harris, everybody who wants to see an agenda pushed forward that actually helps working people needs to be involved in that. I know Stacey Abrams is still organizing for this, and Van Jones is organizing for this. Those are two people whose websites you can go on to get more information. And I'll be putting things on our Facebook page where people can get involved.
Yeah,
but
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. What were you gonna say, John?
No. I was. I didn't know whether you were done. Did you have more to say?
Not really. You know, I mean, everybody here has brought up very salient points, and you know, right now it's a crucial moment in history. You know, America is changing. You know, demographically, culturally, and there's a lot of, you know, there's people who are trying to exploit the fears of people. You know, and they need to be stopped. They need to, you know, they need to be stopped. You know. I read, you know, people talking about, you know, fear mongering for socialism and things like that. You know, they bring up Venezuela, and you know, it's so crazy. It's like, you know, I get dismayed and saddened that people actually buy into, you know, disinformation and misinformation so much. You know, when you look at Venezuela, the only reason why they're economically, you know, strapped right now and why you have all this unrest is because the U.S. placed sanctions on them. And it was Obama who placed the sanctions on them. You know, if you look at a country of similar size and a country that has, you know, a country of similar size and that has a similar population and has oil as its only commodity, a place like Saudi Arabia, they're not doing economically bad. In fact, they're thriving. They've always been thriving because the U.S. has never placed economic sanctions upon them. If the U.S. was to place economic sanctions on Saudi Arabia, within a year they would be broke as well. Yeah. So it's like, and Saudi Arabia has what you probably could be described as far as economically, a socialist economy. They pay their citizens directly. They pay them a stipend directly. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the fear mongering is you know, designed to drive wedges between people, to keep a movement and a demand, you know, for people to demand the government that works for them. You know, and the fear mongering needs to be, you know, stopped. We need to have an all-out effort to stop the fear mongering, to educate people, to inform people. You know, this election and this past 4 years has seen, you know, massive amounts of just, you know, outright falsehoods and lies just propagated among the population, and people believe them. People believe it, and it's astounding. It's incredible that people believe the nonsense that's being put out there. But on that note, you know, I just want to reiterate, you know, these runoffs in Georgia, they're of the utmost importance. You know, right now, within the next couple of months, that is like the where all energy needs to be focused, because without that, you know, we're going to see what the Republican strategy would be to stymie almost everything that is put forward by the new administration, the new Congress, and by the time the midterms come around, the line will be, look, the Democrats can't do anything done. They're a do-nothing, you know, party. And, you know, it would be a waste of time. All this energy and effort put into electing Biden would have been a waste of time if we don't focus on these runoffs immediately now, and we're not successful. And even if we're not successful, we have to maintain that same energy so that in 2 years we can try again to flip the Senate.
So much for not having much left to say, Anthony.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that, you know, the point got across. You know?
No, I understand. Those are important points. By the way, regarding, I know Anthony's going to be next. Regarding those Senate races in Georgia, if you don't trust Biden and you're worried about him selling out, we better win those races in Georgia. And there is no excuse not to win those races in Georgia because Biden won Georgia. So Anthony's absolutely right. That needs to be a major focus. Anthony Staley was next. Sorry about the delay, Anthony.
No problem. But I just want to reiterate on something I spoke about before, and that were the midterms. When people have a tendency to use excuses, oh, we wasn't motivated or not. Listen, people got to understand, you just can't vote in one person and think he's going to be your savior. You have to vote in a collective of people that got the same ideas and the same agenda to help working class people. And until we show that, until we start putting it on pressure, where candidates that just come out there and they say all this rhetoric and ask you to vote for them without a clear agenda on exactly what they're going to do for working class people, we're going to keep doing this same thing over and over. We can't make mistakes or make excuses when it comes to midterms, talking about, oh, it's a midterm, they're not that important. They're very important, because you're giving support to the person that you already put in there in place to help that person gain some of the things that they promised you. So that's why I said, people keep saying, using that excuses about being not motivated. It's not how it goes. You see, in this game, and this is why those that have the advantage has it. They understand that you got to continuously fight. You don't fight today and then sit on your butt for another 3 or 4 years and think something going to come to you. Nothing comes to a rock, okay, other than dust and rain, and that's it. But you have to understand that this is a continuous fight. And what we also have to do is look and put pressure on candidates. If you're not competent or you're not talking about what are the needs of the working class people, put pressure on them to say, what is your plan for them? And we need to do it as a group. Let them see that we're doing that we can bring numbers, that we're doing it as a group, not just one individual going to this candidate and this candidate and just, saying what they want. It's like we could do it as a collective.
Sure.
And put in people and at the top, at the second stage and the third stage of politics that's going to address the need of working people. That is it. And that's will change the dynamics. Right now, the most important things that I would love to see in place for the midterms is mail-in balloting, because you got more people than ever before participated in an election as a whole on both sides. Yeah. You got almost 228 million people voted in this election, and that would help a lot. That would help a lot, because it's changing the dynamic. It's giving the nation itself. It's giving it a bigger voice. Yeah. Because you got people. Here it is. You pick one day in a country that has over whatever. Let's just stick with the 200 million that day on one day, the 3rd of November, and you all got to vote. People are getting discouraged. Talking about, I'm not standing in no lines like that. If they keep early voting and mail-in balloting throughout the election process in all phases, it would give a bigger voice and more participation. Because a lot of people felt not just the issue of the coronavirus, but the fact that a lot of people just don't want to go down there, stand on those long lines, and just to vote. And here it is, you got it centralized on one day. You're not going to get the total participation of the entire nation and their voice. You're not going to have it. This is why you saw this crazy number of people voting, because of early voting and because of mail-in balloting.
That and Trump, right?
Yeah, and then of course the anger and the depression that Trump has held over the nation for 4 years.
I'll tell you one thing, all of that bullshit about people being passive and not motivated, and boy, goddamn if they didn't see it as part of the movements they were building all over this country over Black Lives.
Yeah.
So Jonathan Beatrice has joined us, by the way. Jonathan is a tower operator and the new member of our coalition. I'd like to welcome you to your first live stream, and also wish you happy birthday, Jonathan. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, sir. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And Jonathan, if you want, you can disclose how many birthdays this is for you.
It's the 47th.
Oh, okay. All right, you're younger than me, so you're doing all right.
Boy, you listen. I got him by a lot.
Yeah, we know that Malcolm X picture ain't throwing us off percent there, Anthony.
I
Okay.
got him by 20 years, man. Is you
Okay.
kidding?
All right. I won't call you Grandpa. I promise. But Jonathan, I wanted to give you a chance to comment because you joined us later on. So.
Yeah, well, I wanted to add to what you just said about dispelling the myth that people aren't motivated. I saw this news report where um people who were registered to vote in Nevada and were currently staying in other states they wanted to make sure that their vote was counted in Nevada, and to do that they said the Clark County Elections Board or whatever name they give them, they said you're going to have to show up if you want to make sure your vote was counted. So we can show you that we can't do it online or whatever. We have to show up in person. And they did it, and they waited in line. And there was a line of people that actually waited. They've already voted. They were done. They wanted to make sure their vote counted.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's mirrored all over the country, and the long lines. I mean, I've seen people standing in the rain, like lined up waiting to vote. It's really unbelievable.
Yes, and hopefully, but unfortunately, this was to kick Trump out. The motivation this year was to kick Trump out of office. Democrats need to give people a reason to vote. Like Hillary Clinton did not. The people didn't have a reason to vote for Hillary Clinton, and I think a lot of people that didn't show up to vote for Hillary Clinton probably dismissed the election, thinking, "Oh well, Donald Trump is not going to win anyway. So what does my vote matter anyway? Hillary Clinton is going to clearly win this election because probably maybe they saw the polls, maybe not, or maybe they just saw Donald Trump and thought, well, how does that get elected president? And then Trump won. That on top of just their overall feeling of, either side is going to screw us, especially people of color.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
What's going to change? What's Hillary Clinton going to do for us? But I mean, at least Donald Trump's being honest about his racism, and at least he's upfront about it.
Yeah.
And what keeps bothering me, that Joe Biden is saying, and what he said in his acceptance speech is, I'm not quoting him, but the overall theme is that we have to compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Democratic leaders are always scolding the left about how we, as a party, we have to be willing to compromise. The Democratic Party has been compromising for decades.
Yeah.
NAFTA, the repeal of Glass-Steagall, it's
the new Jim Crow, yeah.
all the way back from the 90s. The Democratic Party has been compromising for decades. It's time for Democrats to leave it to the Republicans, to say to the Republicans, you need to compromise with us.
Right. Jonathan, when have you heard the Democrats say elections have consequences? Remember that bullshit? So if elections have consequences and you won and they lost,
right.
So elections should have consequences, right? But no, they're Charlie Brown with the football.
Right.
Every goddamn time.
Perfect.
And then they wonder, it's like our employer, the MTA. If you show weakness to the MTA like Utano and Samuelson and leader after leader for decades have shown, do they fear us? Should they fear us? Sure, because we have tremendous amount of power. But the question is, you're either organized or you're collectively begging, is basically what it is.
Right.
And if there's not a collective threat, they're not going to fear us. We want our enemies to fear us, and they just don't. But the Democrats tell us the Republicans are our enemies, right? Well, when are we gonna instill the fear of God in the Republican Party and re-instruct them on the fact that they're a minority in this country? But the thing is, the Democrats, they want the Republicans to control the Senate. They do. The establishment Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they absolutely want that because it's a card they can pull out of their pocket anytime somebody says, "Well, what have you done?" Well, what could we do? Our hands are tied. When they had 60 votes in the Senate and the House of Representatives under Obama, what did they do? They passed a corporate bailout for HMOs and pharmaceutical corporations and hospital corporations. And the stakes are too goddamn high. We cannot let that happen now. It's not like before when we didn't have movements that rocked this whole country. We have, but we got nothing to show for it except a lot of symbolism, a lot of Black Lives Matter in the street, phony promises from corporate swine like the NFL that they believe Black Lives Matter, a lot of symbolic gestures. And symbolic gestures don't pay the rent. And if we don't get anything done in these 2 years, Trump Jr. is coming. And we should have no illusions about that.
Or Trump is coming back.
Or Trump is coming back, yeah.
He can run again in 2024.
Yeah.
I know. He's alive.
Yeah, well, I mean, as soon as he survives COVID.
He's alive now.
See, we have.
Yeah, Anthony, go ahead.
Yeah, we have the problem of we put people in place that, number one, doesn't have our best interests at heart, number one. But once they get in, they use our own money to cinch themselves in, to keep themselves where they're at and basically do anything for us. Now, I say that to say, let's go to our union, like we just mentioned. You have a sitting president that right now that doesn't, that showed, it's basically a slap in the face that the interest of the membership is not at heart for him. In other words, here it is, you sign off on privatizing cleaners' job. Since when have you ever heard of union giving their members' jobs away? You sign off on allowing management more control over the membership and how they treat the workers than anybody else. But yet and still, he's there in place, and he's going to try to cinch himself in there, which he has been. This guy been in there so long. He don't. If he was to get sent back to the road, he wouldn't even know what his job is.
He will retire.
He wouldn't have a clue what to do. Yeah, he would. Of course, we know that. But just hypothetically, if he was sent back, he wouldn't even know what his job is because all this time he's done it in the union. So how would he have the best interest of those of us that's out there on the road at heart? He don't have a clue to that because he's getting paid our dues money. He don't know what it is to be abused by and verbally abused by a manager, supervisor, anything. He haven't experienced none of that. The threats, the pressure of a train operator in the midst of him performing his duties, or a conductor, any of us that's out there on the road, all the way down to a cleaner. He hasn't a clue. So how can he address our needs? And he doesn't even have. When the last time that we have a general a meeting where we all the members got together and voiced their opinion? This guy is so far away from us that we sit there and says, well, he represents us. I don't think he represents me.
No. He represents management.
And this is where we have to everybody just gotta, whatever egos, attitudes, and whatever, everybody has to drop that to go after one agenda, because that's what they use against us. All of these people saying, I did this, and I did that. And these egos and everything, they talking about, I want to run for the position. And 9 times out of 10 that you put them there, they're going to carry on the same thing as the predecessor. And we're going to keep coming back to the table with the same thing. We need this. We need this. We've been singing that what we need as a president for the longest. When are we going to actually do the work When are we all going to actually get on the same page and say this is our candidate and this is who we're going to vote with? I'm sure in this upcoming election, there's going to be at least 4 or 5 candidates. Some are there intentionally to split the vote, and some of them would be that spiteful. I don't care if I don't win, but I'm gonna make sure that person don't win.
Well,
So our situation is so chaotic that we all can't come into a room, sit down, and let everybody say what they need to say, and everybody walk out that door when it's all said and done with the same focus and agenda on what we're going to do going forward from this point on. We just can't do that.
Yeah.
And that's killing us.
Well, also, I think that we should be clear as a coalition that we're the only coalition that actually believes that members need to be in control of officers before they're elected, not after. Because if we don't control them before they're elected, we'll never control them after. I mean, you see with Richard, you see with Eric Logel, you see with opposition candidate after opposition candidate who gets elected telling us promises they alone can solve our problems. How's that working out? And look, the bottom line is that we are not giving our support to anyone unless they are willing to respect the members' democratic right to have a say before the election in terms of who runs for what position, what the opposition represents, what we're going to fight for, and what we're willing to accept and what we're not willing to accept. Because the whole point of an opposition is to have the membership's voice heard. And Anthony's, what you were talking about, some of the demoralization is what is the result of members not having that ability to have
exactly. And we have meetings. I'm gonna just say this little piece here, and you can say what you. And see, we have meetings, and our union is supposed to be part of that. Is like when you have a union meeting, you do old business, new business, but there's also a part where the union has to educate the membership, but they don't. They want the membership to be split, arguing among themselves about what is right, what is wrong. And then the biggest part of it is that you have a majority of most people that let people bring the message to them. And that is very bad because now you're at an individual's mercy to tell you whatever they want to tell you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to take the fight, and it's not a lot of time. Sometimes it just takes 5-10 minutes most to read a little provision that may help you and get you to understand a situation much more better than somebody coming and telling you about it. And what gives you your strength is when you see it in black and white and you quote it and you're able to tell somebody. I didn't just hear it from Staley or anybody else or Ferretti or whatever. I read it for myself.
Yeah.
And that's how you get your individual, as far as an individual, your rights, and let people know that you're not just bringing a message from somebody else. That's where you get your strength at.
Well, also, I mean, rights are only as good as your ability to exercise them, right? And we all got to
Exactly.
So Seth was going to speak next, but I know he's been waiting for a while. Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, I wanted to throw in a couple things. Like, I think one thing that's important to point out is that, maybe repeating a little bit, but just saying that it's really important to point out that, well, no, I'll push a little further. The Democratic Party, I think we have to be clear and honest about who they are. Like, the Democratic Party has a base among working people and people of color, but the people who run the party and the people who the party really works for are the capitalists, right? They're another party that believe in capitalism, and that when push comes to shove, they always support the capitalists, unless there's a mass movement of working people that says, we demand this and we're going to trash society or overthrow society or really, shut things down otherwise. And at that point, sometimes, and the Democrats are still working for the rich and powerful, they're saying, listen, we're going to be your canary in the coal mine. We hear, if you don't give up something, things are going to get bad. So let's give something up, right? I think, FDR said it and Obama said it during the Great Recession. He said, he said to Wall Street, he said, gentlemen, basically, I'm the only thing standing between you and the pitchforks. And so we have to recognize that in general, when there isn't a movement forcing the Democrats, they aren't getting things for their base. In fact, they're attacking their base, right? Over and over again, whether it's the crime bill, whether it's ending welfare, whether it's giving trillions of dollars to the banks in Wall Street while letting working people lose their houses over and over again during the Great Recession. So we have to realize that that's the dynamic we're working with. I want to ask a few questions, like on a couple of things. I guess my two questions are, so that's my perspective. What should we be demanding of, right? What should it be demands that we should build our movement around? And two, how should we build it? One thing that we've talked about, and one thing that, I'm really proud of the Local 100 Fightback Coalition is that during the pandemic, we've tried to reach out and work with nurses, work with, other city workers, work with teachers, all supporting them, work with transit workers in other parts of the country and fight back and say, we're all facing these conditions together. We're going to face layoffs. We're facing death from COVID or getting sick from COVID. What are the things we can do to come together and move forward? And I think one big issue and it's an actual question that I have that I'd like to hear people think about is the question of austerity, right? So what that means is during financial hard times and an economic crisis, basically what capitalism says is it says, well, we don't have a lot of money to go around. We can't even, we can't pay for whatever, fire services, schools, any of that. So we're going to have to cut the budgets and lay people off. And that's just the way it is. Working people are going to have to pay. And that's certainly what the Republicans seem to want this time around. And I'm wondering, my sort of impression was that Democrats were going to kind of push that too. However, it does seem like one of the differences that's been talked about is that, Nancy Pelosi wanted a bigger stimulus bill. Now that still may end up being some austerity. It may be inadequate, but so do we think that, that the Democrats are going to push austerity? And if so, can we build a movement around fighting against layoffs and for taxing the rich? Or do we think that that may be one thing that the Democrats are going to do a little bit? And my first impression was that we're going to have to fight the Democrats real hard on that. But other people seem to be saying the Democrats do want a robust stimulus package. So I'll throw that out there for discussion.
Well, just so we know, like, it's not up to the Democrats entirely, and so also a matter of what they think they can get passed too. But I see Ken has his hand up, so go ahead, Ken.
To answer Seth's question, I'll give my little 2 cents. Number one, we have to build around justice. That's number one. Then what we have to do is that we have to educate the people. Then we have to give the people boldness if we can. Leadership by example. Allow me to be clear. It is not unpatriotic to denounce injustice. People say, well, why do you rebel? We rebel because the more the corrupt the state, the more laws they have in place, and that must end. These are not good times for this country. The country's infrastructure is falling apart. Our freedoms are vanishing. They want us to be afraid. But you see, we're not going back to be afraid anymore. We refuse to be held hostage. You see, we are now in crisis mode. Now, I hear a lot of people saying, give Joe Biden a chance, da, 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 da. Look, the election of Joe Biden is a starter pistol going off for every revolutionary activist to get prepared to begin to speak out against everything that he's about to do. You just cannot put a guy in there that's going to continue the policies that primarily is going to hurt non-white people. He made various statements in his little speech. He said, look, Black people, I will not forget you. Yeah, well, guess what? We remember the 94 crime bill, and we won't forget you. The bottom line is this. Without a revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary movement. Revolutions are the locomotives of history. Let the ruling class tremble at our revolution. The workers of the world unite.
Well, you're not going to get any disagreement from many of the people in this room.
I think the question is, how do we get there?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it doesn't, I like, I've been a revolutionary socialist for a long time, but we have to figure out what's the next fight we can lead now that can help push people in the direction that a lot of us want to go, right? Because
I mean, I don't like this idea, but it may come a time where the revolutionary socialist has to run for office. AOC did, she did well. She really did good. So it may be a time for us to say, hey, look, we're going to go into the capitalistic system and use it for a socialist program, point blank, Well,
I think that's go ahead, Seth, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not against that. But I do, the thing that I've been pushing all night is that right now we need to get people off the sidelines, right? People voted, right, in great numbers, and we did a great thing. We got Trump out of office. We got that Nazi-loving, racist, white supremacist, Klan family, piece of filth out of office.
That's what it was. The moment we identified who he was, that's when people began the process to vote. We just got to expose these individuals for who they are, that the people can vote again.
Right, but if we want to win things like stronger unions, if we want to win things like not getting layoffs and taxing the rich so that we can pay for our schools and stuff like that, we gotta get people off the sidelines and out into the streets, because from my view, that's the only thing that's done it. So how do we do that?
Anthony.
This is my take on it. We have the next elections are midterms, right?
Yeah, 2022. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So we need to start voicing our opinion and finding out the major players that are going to be in the election and start questioning them on what is their platform, what are their plans, so we could start planning now on who we're not going to vote for or who we are. But once they start seeing that the public is showing an interest in who's running, then this is when you're going to start seeing that people are going to start paying attention, because they're looking at these numbers that they've seen in this election here, how many voted, right? And they know that once people start questioning them, that they can create an avalanche of either against them or for them. And you just hold them accountable, but we need to start there and let it be known that who are the people and who are that we may possibly support and so forth. So that's the beginning stages right there. That homework right there is where we should start at, because it not only just sends a message publicly about people showing interest now in their political lives now, and how much of a role they're going to take on their personal lives, but we also needed to do it within our union. We need to start cleaning this union out. We've been taken for granted for over 20 plus years. This union have fell to the point where this union is one of the laughing stocks of the city.
Yeah.
And no, you asked me if I would wear what you call it, boldly and proudly, my union logo. No, I wouldn't, because it's not the proud union that it once was. We need to start changing that dynamic. We got to understand that people are in there. They're only in there for their own selfish agendas.
Yeah.
And like there's an old saying that people said, they're not going to teach you how to overthrow them. You're going to have to do that on your own. We are all going to have to do the math and do the homework. And like I said, go into this room, have a meeting, and sort it out, and let it be known. It's not anybody try to use the narrative. Oh, you're trying to take my right to run in the union. No, we're not trying to take your right to run in the union. What we're trying to do is get a competent union administration in place that's going to address the needs of the workers, that's going to challenge management on some of the things that they do, that's going to uphold the contract, that's going to uphold the rights of the members, for that matter, the bylaws and constitution of this union.
Yep.
We need people that's going to do the work and stop, this. I'm putting him there because he's a clown, he's a muppet, he's going to do my bidding for me, and in the meantime you're suppressing the membership.
Well, Anthony, the other thing that we have to look at is what has worked in the past, right? And you know from personal experience that uniting us with the riding public, fighting against booth closures, fighting for jobs, fighting against service cuts and budget cuts, exposing Cuomo over safety, like on the L and other things. Those are the most successful things this union has done in decades. But who did it? It wasn't the leadership. It was people like you and me and Seth. And others, right?
Because that's right. Because till this day, and I'm gonna say it here right now, till this very day, the protest that you, me, Munez, and a couple of other people did and to keep them from closing them booths, we don't get credit for them to this very day. But you remember the Borough Hall, the H9 over at Barclays Center, the J Street, these booths were slated to be closed, what, about 2.5 years ago?
Yeah.
And we were the ones who held the protest and had the media out there. And until this very day, they'll never acknowledge the fact, even though I still keep pictures of it and everything. We were the ones that got out there and did it. And then at the last minute, certain other members of the administration then trying to jump in because we had the media exposure and everything already. So,
right.
But it's always been the members that really that put it all together and that made it happen. These cats have just been taking dudes' money and sitting on their behind and acting like, they're knowledgeable, acting like they're doing the work that's needed to be done. But the real work that needs to be done has always been done by the membership.
Yeah. Well, what I was trying to get at by raising that was that when we make class-wide demands that are in the interest of more than just ourselves, we begin to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And to answer somewhat of Seth's question about how could we fight to make any kind of hazard pay happen, to make any kind of bailout happen, well, one of the ways we can do that is the fight around layoffs, is the fight around jobs. Right now, there's a protest being called in stations for, was it November 15th?
18th.
November 18th, I'm sorry. Save our stations. It's important that we not miss any opportunity to unite the struggles across departments, but also the wider struggles of layoffs that city workers are facing and the overall fiscal crisis and the unfairness of it. Because unless we tap into that and build connections between those struggles, it's not so sure that they won't succeed. In the 1970s, basically they had unions buying bond debt to save the city. And that led to massive layoffs and slitting each other's throats. And that is what's going on right now. Why are the unions so quiet with all these layoff threats? You would think normally they would at least try their bullshit tough guy routine about we'll never accept layoffs. They don't say anything. It's because they're meeting with Cuomo. They're meeting with de Blasio right now to stab each other in the back so that they can, like Samuelson did, compare apples to oranges and say how stupid the teachers were that they got screwed. That's the kind of leadership that we have, and we can't be so sure that they're not gonna succeed. So that's why we need to unite, and why Local 100 is Fightback Coalition is looking to unite with anyone and everyone who sees the danger to build a kind of concrete example of how things could be different. Are there further speakers here? Because we're about to wrap up soon. Anybody else want to speak before we wrap up? Can we know you always got to?
Okay, because you guys got to start. So
I'm gonna press play.
okay. We have a union that let members die and let members get sick. They did not push the MTA to do their jobs. They did not organize the members. They did not shut down unsafe work. They have blood dripping on their hands. The union sent instruction to the members is do not challenge Cuomo. I wish this union would stand against Cuomo the way that they stand against the members. Members need to bend the union officials to our will, okay? Because if we don't do that, why do we need them? Okay, if we don't do that, why do they need them? Now, when you go to a union rep now and question them, okay, you see, this is not personal. You see, if you think that my questioning you as a union rep is wrong, then why are you a union rep? Okay, we are not sheep. We must be shepherds. We have to fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. Okay, I know everybody got to get up early in the morning, and it's been a great conversation. We look forward to continuing it. We're going to try to do another Facebook live stream later this week, focusing on my campaign for Local 100 Executive Board, and also focusing on some safety issues that are going on in the field, and kind of an example of us not needing to wait to take action to enforce safety and demand respect right now. And we can also look at the results of those safety fights, and we can find out what works and what doesn't work. So in any case, you can continue to comment on the feed. Please share out the feed to other groups. And we look forward to continuing the conversation with all of our members and all the people who have followed the stream. We look forward to talking to everybody soon. Everybody have a great night.
Revolution.
Be safe.
Same to everybody. Y'all take care.
Everybody.
All right.
All right,
Anthony,
good night.
see you soon, okay?
All right, then.
Okay, bye.